We want to bring you the latest on a possible criminal indictment of the former president. Late this afternoon, we learned the name of the witness who met with Manhattan grand jury. It's someone who knew the former president very well. CNN senior justice correspondent Evan Perez joins us now. So talk about the witness and why they're relevant.
Well, Anderson, the witness is David Pecker. He's the former chairman of American Media, the parent company of National Enquirer, and he was key as part of this effort to keep Stormy Daniels' story from becoming public back in 2016 and the days before the 2016 election. He allegedly brokered the payment, the $130,000 hush money payment to Stormy Daniels to try to make sure her story didn't come out. And according to his version and from what we've heard from Michael Cohen, the former president's fixer, he essentially got paid. He got paid from Michael Cohen that $130,000 to make sure that story never came out.
The last known witness to appear before the grand jury was a former legal advisor of Michael Cohen's. Do we know how Pecker fits into all this? I mean, it seems clearly that Pecker was brought in to rebut some of what that attorney had said.
Right, exactly. Bob Costello said that he appeared as a witness to undercut the credibility of Michael Cohen, who is, of course, the most important witness in this investigation so far, Anderson. In the case of Pecker, it's believed that he could be somebody who could rebut some of the testimony from Bob Costello. Obviously, he was involved in helping broker that payment to Stormy Daniels and to make sure, that story didn't come out before the 2016 election. So presumably, he would be there to help at least underscore and help shore up the version of events that Michael Cohen has told, and despite the fact, obviously, that Michael Cohen has his own credibility problems.
So what happens now? Because this grand jury only meets a couple of days here or there.
Right. They were scheduled to meet today, and as far as we know, there was no indictment returned today. They're scheduled to meet again on Wednesday. They also may be able to meet on Thursday, Anderson. What we don't know is when this case might be wrapped up, whether there's going to be an indictment, and whether it's going to happen anytime soon. We do know that, obviously, the fact that Pecker, who has appeared a couple of times in this case, he's an important witness because of his central role in it. It does appear that the prosecutors are nearly at the end of their presentation on this case, Anderson.
Right. Evan Perez, appreciate it. Perspective now from CNN political commentator Alyssa Farr-Griffin, who served as White House Director of Communications for the former president, and Jessica Roth, a former federal prosecutor. Jessica, clearly he was brought in. I mean, Costello was casting doubt on Michael Cohen's testimony. Michael Cohen had said this was hush money payment was paid in order to not have some bad news come out that could damage Trump in the election. Costello is saying, well, Michael Cohen told me it was, Michael Cohen's idea, and it was to avoid Melania Trump being upset.
So this testimony, I think, was very important to shore up the credibility of Michael Cohen's testimony, that the payments were related to the campaign. I mean, that's the most significant testimony that David Pecker has to offer. AMI, where he worked, entered into a non-prosecution agreement with the federal government several years ago when they were initially investigating Michael Cohen for these payments. And in that non-prosecution agreement, AMI agreed that these were campaign-related expenditures.
So as part of that agreement, does he have to show up to testify?
He has to be cooperative. And so presumably the federal government is asking him to be cooperative with other prosecutors as well.
Alyssa, I mean, does an indictment, I mean, over the weekend, people at, this rally Trump held at Waco were saying that an indictment would actually spur them on to support the former president. Do you buy that?
I don't buy that necessarily. I mean, listen, he's the front runner at this point. He's polling above 40%, significantly higher than the next person behind him. I think it's very likely at this juncture he would get the nomination. The election's far out, but this is what matters in this moment, is Donald Trump chose to use specific language in the last couple of weeks leading up to this possible coming indictment that is once again calling for violence. It echoes the language he used ahead of January 6th. I know the man, you know him decently well. Like, his intent there is extremely clear. We know it from January 6th.
He's been clearer than ever before.
and it didn't materialize. What that signals to me is that he thought that there was a base there that was going to come out. They were going to storm New York, wherever it might be. And people aren't turning out because this is a Donald Trump grievance. This is his wrongdoing catching up with him. It's not the same as lying about the election being stolen and people coming out to rally. So I think it might be a sign that in some ways he is weakened, but at the same time, he's still the front runner.
I just want to read something he said. A reporter for NBC asked him over the weekend at the rally whether violence would be potentially justifiable if he were indicted. And he responded, quote, and this is so classic him, I don't like violence and I'm not for violence at all, but a lot of people are upset. And you know, they rigged an election, they stole an election, they spied on my campaign, they did many bad things.
Yeah, the butt's doing the heavy lifting there. I mean, it's classic Donald Trump. Take him at his word. He's not being coy about what he wants to happen, but it's not materializing because this is a mess of his own making that's catching up with him. And by the way, you know, from unsolicited reaching out that I get from Trump world, they're nervous about this. They really are. They thought this was a case that was dead up until a few months ago. They thought they were going to get buy-in of all the investigations. It was what they were probably least worried about. Now they're realizing this is the one that's going to likely come
Jessica,
first.
in terms of the law, does it matter if, you know, the former president didn't want this news to come out because he was annoyed, he was upset, he was worried Melania Trump would be upset, he didn't want to embarrass, you know, his kids, I wouldn't say he's felt a sense of shame because I don't think he feels shame. And he cared about it affecting the election. If there were other reasons other than just the election, does that make him immune here?
If it's for the purpose of affecting the campaign, right, that's what matters here. And there's lots of evidence that it was
there can be other issues involved as well,
yes,
but as long as the campaign was involved.
The question is, would it have been made but for the election? That is with the legal test. And so it does matter if there were other reasons. But there's really good evidence that it was made because of the campaign. Stormy Daniels had come forward before and asked for payment, and he refused to pay her. And it was only as things were heating up with the 2016 campaign, and in particular right after the release of the Access Hollywood tape, which had done considerable damage to his campaign, that he decided now was the time that he had to make sure that she didn't come forward. So I think there is very strong evidence that this was a campaign-related expenditure, and that's also where Pecker comes in so prominently, because he's already testified that this was coordinated with the Trump campaign for the purpose of influencing the election.
Right. It was David Pecker who was initially approached by Representative for Stormy Daniels.
Right, and this is something that, I mean, as you state, Trump could have dealt with sooner. He waited to, and because of that, it stepped into the legal murky area of being a campaign finance violation. I think it's strains credulity to claim that he was doing it to protect his wife. That's not something that I think we've seen throughout the course of his public life. I think I think we know what direction this indictment is going to go. I don't want to get ahead of it, but I also want to caution I don't think this is the strongest case against Donald Trump. Of the many pending investigations, this is not what's going to keep him out of office again.
How difficult is this case to actually put in front of a jury?
It's going to be a very challenging case. I mean, there are a number of legal issues that the district attorney's office is going to have to overcome with respect to the charge that it seems that they are contemplating related to the campaign finance violation, which of course would be a matter of federal law incorporated essentially into a state prosecution.
Which has not been done. This is
there's some precedent for it, but not that actually been tested all the way up through the courts. In other words, there have been pleas that reflected a similar charge, but it hasn't really been fully litigated. And then as a factual matter, they are going to be relying on Michael Cohen. And he is a problematic witness, which is why it is so important that he be corroborated by other witnesses like David Pecker and by the documents in the case. And also, Kellyanne Conway, I believe, from the campaign also has testified before the grand jury, who would be another important witness to corroborate that this was coordinated with the Trump campaign.
Jessica Roth, appreciate it. Elizabeth Griffin, thanks so much.